This is the She Dares to Travel podcast, and I am your host, Raquella Pollock. After spending a decade managing the #1 travel agency in Canada, I am now here to connect you to women that are taking the travel industry by storm, as well as female business professionals that also have a passion for travel, just like me. We are here to inspire, uplift, and motivate you to not only follow, but plan out your dreams, no matter where in the world they may be. And of course, this wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, Staples Studio, where I am currently recording from. Check them out on their website, studio.staples.ca. It truly is a new approach to co-working with community at its heart. There's access to hot desks, meeting and event spaces all across North America. So thank you, Staples Studio, for connecting us and sponsoring this podcast. And thank you for listening. Enjoy, be sure to subscribe and follow along. When it comes to beautiful British Columbia, Vancouver Island is definitely one place to put high on your bucket list. As your island gateway, Nanaimo Airport is conveniently nestled in the Central Island. It's located right between the hubs of the Cowichan Valley and Nanaimo, and you're only moments away from the ocean surf, mountain bike trails, year-round golf, wineries, and majestic mountains, just to name a few. The air terminal building has more than tripled in size over the years thanks to many projects that have taken place and a 20-year expansion plan for the building. And super fun fact, did you know that Nanaimo Airport actually started out as a base for the Royal Canadian Air Force? It was for glider pilot training facilities and wartime emergency airfield. And now more than 80 years later, it's a regional airport that's connecting Vancouver Island to the world. So definitely put Nanaimo Airport on your next destination list when you go to Vancouver Island. So go get outside and explore. Hello, all you daredevils. We are back. It is another episode, another week to talk to leading women in the tourism industry. And today has a big focus on aviation and aerospace. Tracy Medve is a Canadian airline executive. She was the first woman inducted as Honorary Life Member of the Air Transport Association of Canada, the ATAC, where she also is chairwoman. She received accolades in the industry, such as the Elsie McGill Northern Lights Award for Business, the James C. Floyd Award at the Canadian Aerospace Summit, and has spent the past 35 years in the aerospace industry, now working as president of KF Aerospace, which serves as a multifaceted maintenance, cargo, military flight training, and aircraft leasing organization right here in Kelowna. And it has a beautiful, beautiful aviation museum too. She was formerly president of Canadian North Airlines and has held various senior airline management positions at Norcan Air, Time Air, Canadian Partner, and Canadian Regional Airlines. She also co-founded the CT Aero Projects, which is a Calgary-based consultancy focused on air transport resource management, working with a wide range of public and private aviation clients all around the world. Tracy, what a life you've lived. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely incredible. I want to dive right in. Just tell us all about yourself. Have you always lived here in Kelowna?
No, I've lived in Kelowna for 10 years. I grew up in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I went to university in Saskatoon. I've lived in the Northwest Territories, Yellowknife, and I've lived in Inuvik. I've lived in Thailand. I've lived in Toronto. I've lived in Calgary. So I'm a bit of a nomad, but it's been interesting.
Wow. Love it. Has it always been aviation that's taking you to those places?
Generally speaking, I went to law school in Saskatchewan. I graduated in 1981 and settled my student loan at 18% interest, if any are of that generation. And there were no jobs. There were no articling jobs. So that was my first time that I lived in Yellowknife, because that was the only place I could find an articling position. So I graduated, did my articles, came back to Saskatchewan, articled again. I was making, in Yellowknife, I was making $900 a month, and my bachelor suite cost $400 a month. So it was
Wow.
It was interesting economic times, which I know people can probably relate to now. In any event, I ended up in Regina working for the Saskatchewan Housing Corporation, and I was walking down the street and I wasn't particularly happy with that role, but it was a job. And I was walking down the street one day, and a grasshopper came up and smacked me in the face. And I thought, I need to get out of this town and out of this job. So I called a gentleman, Mr. Albert Ethier, who owned Norcan Air. and begged a job. It was in Saskatoon where I wanted to go back to, and that was in 1985. And he hired me on completely over the phone, not knowing anything about me really. And I started.
What was your thought to get? What made you think to call him?
It was so long ago. That was almost 40 years ago. I think it was the grasshopper. Like, I was desperate and I could only think of that. He and my dad had been friends in Prince Albert, and my dad used to take us. He was a private pilot, and he would take us flying every Sunday in this little Cessna 150 over Prince Albert. And, he had a couple of other friends that were private pilots. So I guess it was always in my mind that aviation was a thing. And Albert Ethier had owned a DC-3. And I remember when I was a real little kid going in that DC-3, and it's like walking up a big hill because they're kind of a tail dragger airplane. And so there was, I don't know, I suppose it was the culmination of all those things born out of desperation to get out of the situation I was in. So that was the start of it. And it turned out to be a really interesting career right from day one. So
very much so. And even with him knowing, so he knew that you were a lawyer previously. Yeah. And then what was the role that you were basically interviewing yourself, volunteering him that you needed?
Well, I came in as counsel, if you will, but he did have a longstanding lawyer that had worked for him and did all his personal stuff and all his business stuff first. So I came in really as a lawyer, but I really didn't know anything. I'd just gotten out of law school. I was, in my mid-20s. And he came to me with a cocktail napkin, just a small little cocktail napkin. And he'd written some stuff about buying 2 airplanes from a company in Italy, and just 2 little jet airplanes. And he said, just write up a contract and sort this out, kind of thing. So, okay, sure, I can do that. I had no idea. It turned out to be just a colossal effort to get those airplanes because they had liens against them. I ended up in Italy for a month trying to sort all that out. And I had no idea what I was doing. But we got the airplanes, and they flew for a long time after that, for years and years and years on scheduled service. And it turned out to be a really successful thing that he'd done. So by then I was hooked on, and when you work for a small organization like that and you're standing around with your face hanging out, basically put your hand up to volunteer for anything, you get a chance to really do some interesting projects. And that's kind of how it started.
And I bet the learning in that in itself, to be able to be through, I'm very much like that too, where I want to just get thrown into something and I'll just figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Learning. So that seems like an incredible, just go to Italy, sort it out. You'll make it work.
Do you know that song, if you're going to take a leap of faith, always trust your cape? Mm-hmm. That's kind of how it has to be. I think you just go, all right, I think I'm smart enough to figure it out. There's going to be obstacles. Let's not think about all of that right now. Just step off the garage and it'll be fine. Hopefully.
You'll be fine. Exactly. The cape will pick up in the wind. Exactly. Oh, I love it. I love it. So aviation, of course, then has been a passion since a young age for you. And then what was the draw then to go into law school? Did you, those 2 worlds combine prior to, or it was pretty separate?
Very separate. I wasn't very good at math and science, so I couldn't do any, I knew I couldn't do any of those things. Mm-hmm. And so law was kind of, well, and then there was Perry Mason, who was a big deal when I was a kid, so I always had this Perry Mason idea, I guess, and really had I was the first person in our family, for any generation that I'd ever known about, that wanted to go to university and had struck out to do that. And I know my parents were sort of wide-eyed about the whole thing. They were supportive in a way, but they were kind of going, I don't know, university and then law school, what the heck? I don't think I don't think that's for you. But anyway, it all worked out. And I realized in that Regina situation that probably if you're going to practice law, I think you need to love it a lot, because it is a very demanding career. And if you don't love it, then you're not going to do your clients a good service. And I didn't think I was going to love it. So I needed to find something else to fall in love with.
Nice. And obviously you did, very clearly. Well, once
you get into the vortex of the aviation aerospace world, you cannot get out. It's almost impossible. So
I love it.
It's interesting.
Right? I say that so much about travel in itself. And we all know the saying, you just get bit by the travel bug. Once you start, you can't stop. And it sounds from the people I've spoken to in aviation, very similar. It's all relative for the same too. So you mentioned as well that you lived in Thailand. So what were you doing and how did you wind up there?
For about 15 years, a friend and I, Carmen Loberg was his name. He lives in Calgary. We had an aviation management consulting company, and we got hired by Thai Airways, who had received funding from the Economic Development Corporation, because Thai Airways was using not Thai Airways, I misspoke, Bangkok Airways, because they were using de Havilland Dash 8s, which is a Canadian product, and EDC supports those types of exports of goods and services. So he was having financial problems with Bangkok Airways, and there was a small team of us were sent over there to do a really in-depth look at what was going on at Bangkok Airways, and we ended up there for probably about a year. My oldest son was 18 months old, dragged him over there. He was a fat blonde kid, so he stuck out a bit like a sore thumb. And that was interesting to have a child there. Thailand is a wonderful place, and the people are really wonderful as well.
What area of Thailand were you in? Right in Bangkok?
It was in Bangkok, and also Bangkok Airways owned the airport at Koh Samui. So we ended up spending some time there as well, which was very beautiful place.
Gorgeous place.
So it was a lot of scooting to the beach on the weekends, but spending the rest of the time working and trying to figure things out.
I love it. Koh Samui Airport is one of the most prettiest airports, I think, to fly into.
Right?
When you're looking
with all the bougainvillea trees down the whole length of the runway.
Yes, it's gorgeous. And like you feel like you're landing on this beautiful island. You can just feel it when you arrive. Yeah. Gorgeous. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. What would you say or recommend for someone that's going to Thailand or the areas you went to, something they have to do or see?
I might not be a good one to ask. Honestly, it was a long time ago. It's almost 30 years ago. And I haven't been back since. I think my own travel bias now, after traveling for 40 years to a lot of places on the planet, is if you ever have a chance to travel where you know somebody who lives there and then can show you the real life in their place, to me, that's of much more value than traveling to go look at something that holds less interest for me personally now. Thailand's beautiful. Everywhere is beautiful, and the people are lovely. So I think you could step off anywhere and be open to having interactions with the people and follow your nose. You'll end up somewhere really interesting. And the food, bar none, the best food in the world.
Agreed.
Right.
So good.
So
good. Yeah. There was, when we were in Bangkok, we went just before 2020 hit, and there, I regret not going. So I have to go back, but there's a food street vendor who has like 2 Michelin stars. And apparently there's a lineup around the block to get to it. So I'm definitely going to go. It's so unique. And she wears these big, almost like old aviator goggles, and she wears them as she cooks.
Oh, yeah, I guess you'd need that. But
right?
I don't know what it's like now, but 30 plus years ago, you could eat from any of the street vendors. That's where we ate. And I fed my little kid, same thing. We just buy from the street vendors a lot of the time, and the food was delicious, and nobody got sick, nothing. We were never sick there. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Where have your travels brought you recently?
I just got back from vacation, and my preference now, having traveled for 40 years, is to do more traveling closer to home. So I was just on Vancouver Island, and my partner and I signed up for a falconry course at the Duncan Raptor Center. So we were 5 days, 6 hours a day in school, if you will, in bird school. And it was one of the most charming things, interesting things I've ever done, really. It was fantastic. Wow. The center is really, the program is well organized. The instructor was very informative and really, she knew her onions, as they say. And we got to do so many cool things. And I know some people are terrified of birds. Which is probably not for you, but honestly, if you want to do something a bit unique and appreciate a whole other aspect of our world, it was a pretty great place to spend the week.
What type of birds did you work with?
Everything from little kestrels, little small little falcons, super cute little red guys, Harris hawks, peregrine falcons, gyr falcons, which are found in the far north, and then vultures. They have turkey vultures and black vultures, and they also have bald eagles. And so we did find ourselves with this 10-pound bald eagle on our hand at one point, which was
Wow.
stupefying, really, to see them up close like
Yeah.
that. They're so beautiful and they're so powerful. And
Wow.
so it was a bit breathtaking, that one.
That is incredible. I had no idea. Do we have vultures in Canada?
We have turkey vultures in British Columbia. The black vultures are not native to here, but turkey vultures everywhere.
Wow.
And they do serve quite an important function in the ecosystem because they eat carcasses and clean up all that stuff that can spread disease. They are somewhat immune to it. It's their main food source. And so so some people go, I don't like vultures. Well, okay, but they're really important to the ecosystem.
They're important. They serve a purpose. Yeah.
They serve a really important purpose. Yeah.
Like the only thing I think that doesn't serve a purpose is mosquitoes. That one we could go without. Yeah. That one definitely we don't need.
Yes, you do, because that's what the bats feed off of.
Oh, see, there's always something. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Good point. I stand corrected. Wow. That's incredible. And what a unique way. Yeah. A really unique way to learn something and also support local, stay somewhere kind of close to. I've been feeling that a bit more lately, with the travels, but it's always hard within Canada where a flight to Europe is the same cost to go out to Eastern Canada. So it's tricky in that regard, but it is important to be able to support where we live. I mean, we live in a beautiful spot too.
Well, if you want to appreciate where we do live, travel is good, because I'm always happy to come home. And, now living in the Okanagan Valley, it is stunning here, and it was beautiful.
I want to ask a bit more too, with the consultancy you've done in aviation, speak a bit more to what that entails. What type of, contracts did you have, companies that you dealt with? How did that look as a career?
Yeah, that was very interesting. We had a wide variety of customers. The RCMP Air Service hired us to do an analysis. They wanted to replace the airplanes that they were flying, that they used in their air service, with a different aircraft. They asked us to take a look at some options for them. For example, we were hired by Norterra Inc., which is 100% owned by the Inuvialuit from the Western Arctic. We were retained by them to do the acquisition of Canadian North. So Canadian North was part of Canadian Airlines at that time, and we bought that we ended up helping them acquire that operating division. And obviously Canadian North still flies today. They were in a joint venture with Nunasi Corporation, which was the Eastern Arctic Inuit. And so that goes on today. And both my partner and I ended up being president at different times of Canadian North as a result of doing that work. So it was never know what the phone was going to ring and what we'd get asked to do. But they're always really interesting projects, digging into some little piece of something that, the entity that was asking us to do it didn't have time or didn't have the in-house capability to do it. So it was fun.
Very interesting. Seems like you never know what the day is going to bring. Something new every day. Yeah, in aviation. Can you speak a bit to just how it works with working with like Transport Canada? And when you are working with different airlines or aviation, is there anything that us aviation commoners would need to know in layman's terms? Because I know a lot of the time we only see what we see. We get on a plane, we know there's delays. We get annoyed by delays. Is there something more that could kind of lift the veil a bit for us to kind of remember next time we travel?
We don't have enough time for me to cover it all, but, having run a scheduled air service for as long as I did at Canadian North and having been involved in a consulting role prior to that, I think travelers don't appreciate, and maybe they shouldn't, but it might help direct your frustrations a little bit as to how little in the journey process the airline actually has control over, how little they have control over. There's airports, there's security, there's all the transport regulations that say you pilot can't fly more than so many takeoffs and landings and so many hours in a day. So when there's bad weather and you've got your crew is running out of duty time, and now what do you do? And you've got to have crew all over the place to be able to slide in. And that all has a cost to it, which who's going to pay for the cost? And it ends up in your airfares. And there are just so many variables. It's a huge country, lots of distance to travel. There's only so many airplanes in an airline's fleet. Those airplanes get scheduled to route around and, come back they're intended to come back to a certain base every night. That's where the crew is. You end up with bad weather. Now what? So you've got an operations control center that's trying to do the best that they can to accommodate the most passengers that they can with the least disruption. But there's just like layer upon layer upon layer of other inputs that they don't have control over. De-icing. You don't have control over de-icing. Air traffic control. You don't have a control over that. Plowing the runway. Don't have control over that. Baggage carousels and baggage handling. A lot of airlines don't have their own baggage handlers, and they don't control the baggage handling system within the airports. I could go on and on, but there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle to just pull the chocks away from an airplane, have it leave the gate and arrive at a gate at another destination. And it's mind-boggling to me, actually, how well it works and what a great job the industry. I haven't been in that industry for a number of years, so I'm not patting my own self on the back, but I think the aviation industry has done a fabulous job of creating really high expectations for their customers. The expectation is, I'm going to the airport, I'm giving you my bag, I'm going to get on this airplane, it's going to leave when I want, it's going to arrive, my bag's going to show up, I'm on my way. And when that doesn't happen, it's very frustrating, but that's the expectation. And, just to put it in perspective, one last thought. When I was at Canadian North, for a time, there was quite a bit of competition between Edmonton and Yellowknife, and they were selling fares for $50. And so the local people in Yellowknife were going, see, I knew Canadian North was charging us too much money. I knew it all along. Then I said, guys, think about this. You want the airplane to be safe. You want the pilots to know where they're going. You want in-flight service. Flight attendants we served hot meals on our airplanes. You want us to pick up your bag. You want us to drop your bag where you're going. You want us to get there on time. You want all that to work well for $50. Oh, and have a hot meal. And then you're going to land in Edmonton Airport at that time. You're going to go take your own bag now and schlep it to a taxi cab. That person may or may not help you put it in the boot of the car. You get in there. And a lot of times we need to go to this place downtown. They wouldn't know how to get there. And guess what the fare was? $50. So
such a good perspective.
It was really frustrating to be in that business in that regard, because I know how people that were part of the airline cared about getting people from point A to point B and meeting all those expectations, but there's just a number of impediments, and some of them just don't have any control over. So
what an incredible perspective, because you're right. It's layers upon layers. It's one trickle effect that will impact another. I had a conversation and someone asked me the other day, with my background managing the travel agency, we heard it all. We heard all the complaints. We heard everything, if not more than what they hear at the airport, if not more. But I was having a conversation and they asked me and they're like, it's your take on all the delays that are happening at these airlines? And I'm like, well, remember 2020 when everything was grounded and they had to offload their aircrafts because they couldn't afford them? They had to make major changes to their scheduling. Now they just don't have as many routes. And if you have, one airport crew that's late, or they need to redirect to another section of the airport, you're now sitting on the tarmac waiting for that to happen. They can only do so much. So you can't just blame the airline. But I see on Facebook all the trolls that are just, blah, 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 couldn't get my bags, blah, blah, blah. And I feel the same way. So I hope this shines a little appreciation, out there.
Well, and the other thing, now that a big part of, the work that we do at KF Aerospace is maintenance, repairs and overhauls on those commercial type airplanes. I think the other thing that a lot of people don't appreciate when you think about the cost of an airline ticket, you've got to pay crews, you've got to pay standby crews, you've got to pay the airports, you've got to pay nav fees, you've got to pay landing fees, you've got to pay fuel, you've got to pay for food, you've got to pay all those things. And then there's the maintenance of the airplanes and the engines and the gear and all of those bits and pieces. And I know I take people through our hangars sometimes, and it gives you a really good perspective on what the airlines are required by the regulators to do to maintain the airplanes, to make sure that they're safe. And every couple of years, it depends on the airplane type and so on. But, generally speaking, every couple of years, they have to put that airplane on the ground. They might still be making lease payments or finance payments, put it on the ground, take it to a facility like we have at KF Aerospace, and do very, very, very extensive checks and repairs and all of those kinds of things, to the point where we're talking, and if you start talking about overhauling engines, it's all in the millions of dollars for one airplane. And the airplane's out of service. It can't be earning any revenue. So that all has to get factored in somehow. Who's paying for that? Well, we all are. We're all paying all the airport fees. The airports charge the airlines to use their facilities. Well, that gets passed along. So it's an expensive business to be in.
Definitely expensive, very expensive. But also, you're also getting into a hunk of tin and you're traveling around the world. That in itself is a bit magical when you really take a step back to think of too, right? So it makes sense that it costs money to make this happen. It definitely makes sense. Yeah.
And you have a huge country, like think of the size of Canada, relative to the US. So they're, roughly the same size. We have, a tenth of the population, and we've got the same distances to travel. So when you look at the cost of travel, in Canada, then you add on all the taxes and all these other things. There's fewer people to spread the costs over, and it's expensive. So
very, very expensive. What an industry to be in. So tell me a bit more about KF Aerospace and just talk about, I know you mentioned a bit of, like, you guys obviously overhaul commercial airlines. What else do you do there? Because it is a gorgeous facility. I was just there. I saw you there. It is beautiful with the museum. It's beautiful with the aircraft. So yeah, talk about what a day in the life of at KF is.
Well, KF's a really interesting organization. It was started in 1970 by Barry Lapointe. He was 26 years old when he started it. He was an aircraft maintenance engineer, and he was basically working out of he was working down in Vernon, but he was doing a lot of mobile type repairs and so on. It was sort of him and his dog, I think.
Oh wow!
Working on smaller airplanes, and he was a pilot as well. And so he was asked to come to Kelowna because there was a demand for the kinds of services that he provided. So he did that. Started in 1970, and he's still there. 53 years later. And the company just grew. Like, it started maintenance, and then he had a chance to start flying. And then, one thing just led to another. And now we are 1,150 people across Canada, about 850 people in Kelowna. We've got a very large maintenance base in Hamilton. We have a line maintenance base in Vancouver. And then we do military pilot training for Canada from a base in Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. So there are a lot of things going on every day at KF. There's the maintenance piece. We do aircraft leasing. We've got a Canadian-based leasing company. We also have a leasing entity in Ireland. We've a flying business as well. We fly cargo, and we recently started a passenger charter service called Aeroflyer, flying a lot for the LNG program, say in Terrace. Yeah, and then the military pilot training. So there's a lot of moving parts in our world every day.
When you say you're busy when we first started, I get it. I get it. Oh, wow. That's incredible. When did he start that again?
1970.
1970. Wow. And obviously a passion for aviation, passion for the mechanics of it, and then growing from there. Where do you guys see the next 5 to 10 years for KF? What's your guys' forward vision? To grow more, or?
We're a private company, and we have basically one shareholder. That's still Mr. Lapointe. So we don't have that sort of public company perspective of growth for the sake of growth. And we don't have that sort of quarter to quarter earnings type mentality. So I think that it gives us a lot of opportunity to be opportunistic when we see things that come along, and you have the time to look at it and go, you know what, that makes sense. It's a good fit for our group of companies. I think that's what we'll stay doing as long as we're private, and there's certainly no intention to make a change there. So I think it will continue to go along. I think the diversity of the company has been really key to the fact that we're still in business 53 years. We haven't made it. The landscape is littered forever, particularly privately owned companies. One of the reasons why KF Aerospace is still in business today is because of the diversity of all the different businesses. They're separate but interrelated, and I think that's really been part of the reason why the company is still here today, especially privately owned companies. There's not many of them that have been around this long. And also another big piece was that Barry was also really careful about not scraping all the money out of the company. If the company made money, he's stayed there and he reinvested in his own companies. Also really, really important to this day.
Wow.
So we have a lot of control over our destiny. It was, always people from the outside interested in looking at KF, and we just go, you know what, we're not for sale today. That could change, I suppose. But right now, it's, I guess, the short answer to your question of what do we see for the next period of time is to stay the course and try to get better and better at the things we do and look for those opportunities that might be a little bit niche for us. And if it makes sense, pursue that. So.
Great idea. Great idea. I love that for you guys. And it seems like it is a very well-rounded company. And I love that it's private. I think it's very unique. And sometimes for the growth that you guys have had, it can be very rare too. Very rare. So I want to switch gears a bit and speak and hear your thoughts on women in aviation. So I'm going to read some stats. It's from May of 2022, the Air Education and Training Command Studies and Analysis Squadron. They did a review on the representation of women in commercial and military aviation. The stats showed that female representation grows about 1% per decade in the past 60 years, with only 2.6% of women in maintenance and 5.6% as aviators and only 3% as senior leaders. So when I give you those stats, what comes to mind for you?
We haven't done a very good job as an industry getting women to understand that it can be a really great career. It's sort of a mystery in a way. Like when I started law school in 1979, I guess, there were 20% women in my class. And now easily more than 50% of students are in law school are women. So, those, and I think engineering probably a little bit behind that, but I think they've made some pretty good strides there as well. So, after all these years, I'm really not sure of the answer, other than I think there is an exposure requirement to just get young women and their families to understand that this is a realistic career. It's completely attainable, and not just flying, but on the maintenance side. We have, our stats at KF are more encouraging than what you just read. We're about 20% women across the company, and we have a lot of women that are flying and a lot of women that are working in that aircraft maintenance world. And I think the jobs they're well-paying jobs. They're flexible in that those are transportable skills. We don't like when they transport away from KF, but just park that idea for a minute. But they are a transportable skill. You can go elsewhere in the world and work on aircraft. I think, especially for women, maybe trying to raise families and so on, there's a shift work element to it. Not always the most fun, but certainly that flexibility is helpful when you're raising children. So there's all kinds of good and it's interesting. It's not easy work, but there's a lot of jobs that are not easy work. And I think the rewards can really be there in terms of the satisfaction and knowing when you sign out an airplane, you sent it away to go carry people wherever they're going on the planet, and you put your name to it and say that airplane's safe. Like there's a lot of pride in that. So I think we just need to continue to try and expose young women, just young people in general, to the fact that this is a realistic and very accessible career option. And the Center for Excellence, that's sort of a legacy project for Barry. He wanted to leave something to the community that has been very good to him over the last 53 years. And, part of the idea of the center is to give exposure, if you will, to some of the elements of aviation that might be of interest, whether it's working at the airport side of it, working on the maintenance side, working as a pilot, whatever, air traffic controller. There's a need everywhere. And so that was part of what drove that project in the first place, was to give that kind of exposure. So I think that's really the best way that we can do it. We do job fairs. So we're getting the word out there about our company, but just about aviation as a career in general. So there's lots to do, but it's slow. It is slow,
but at least it's moving in the right direction. It seems like. Last week, I was at the BC Aviation Council's Silver Wings Awards and Scholarships for a lot of young people through BCIT that are in aviation in all aspects of it. And it was so encouraging. And they actually noted that this was the most women they've had 4 scholarships, going like graduating through the courses. And it was really encouraging to see, you know, from maintenance to pilots and just hear their stories. So that in itself, I thought was really unique and interesting. And then the other thing that pops to mind is what you said about family and just having the support of the family behind you. Cause I can imagine if you're like, I want to be a pilot, it'd be very easy to be like, okay, child, sure. That's what you want to do. Right. But you need that support too and encouragement. And I can't remember the name of the woman, but I saw on LinkedIn that a woman had passed recently and someone had done an article with her, an interview with her beforehand. And she was a well-known pilot. And I guess it was a take your kid to work day when her son was younger. And her son came to work with her. And then, you know, people started asking him, they're like, oh, so do you want to be a pilot when you grow up? And he, without a beat, was like 6 or 8 years old and was like, oh no, a pilot, that's a girl's job.
Yes.
I don't want to do that. I was like, what a good perspective, right? He grew up always knowing his mom was a pilot. So that was a woman's job. So,
girls work, I don't want to do that. That's
right. Really it's good. A girl story.
That's really good. That's really good.
How do we mimic that, right? How do we mimic that? Yeah. I love it. You know what? One thing that was actually really interesting, and I feel like the dial is moving in the right direction, but it also has some connotation to it where, for example, I was promoting this podcast and I had a male come up to me recently and he said, oh, well, I've been in aviation for a long time. You know, maybe I would like to get interviewed and share my story. And I said, that's fantastic. I'm like, you know, I could introduce you to someone. And he's like, oh, isn't that what you do? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I showcase, you know, the women in the tourism industry and aviation and to share their story. And his response was, shame on you. And I kind of took a step back, but I had prepped for this interview and I already had those stats in mind. So at least I said, oh, I'm like, shame on me. I'm like, well, no, actually, did you know, like commercial pilots, there's less than 5% that are female. I'm like, shame on me. I'm like, it's more shame on the industry, really. Like it's something that we need to show and promote. But I thought that type of thinking is something that is a setback. So it's hard to know how to respond when comments like that come up.
Yeah. You know, having been in this industry for 40 years and having started as a very young female and, you know, very, 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 very male dominated at that point, I run into that attitude from time to time where there were just individuals that just didn't get it, or they wanted to make a big deal about me being a girl and them not. And so I really found early on that if I just didn't make a big deal about it, everybody else forgot about it as well. And we just got on with doing what we were there to do. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that there are still those attitudes, but I think to be encouraged, I don't run into that very often now. And, you know, I still work with, you know, obviously a big majority of men. They're not saying those kinds of things. They're really not. And I would guess that if that person had mentioned that to someone from KF, for example, they would have got, no, shame on you. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because we are working to try and really accommodate having more women in our workplace. We just opened a daycare on site.
I heard that. That's such great news. What a great idea.
It's all aviation themes and it's right there in the parking lot. So, and that, you know, that was a team effort. And there were a lot of boys involved in making that decision and making that become a reality. So I think that person will find himself as an outlier in my perspective. It's not really that. I think it's more about exposure of young women to the reality of the aviation and aerospace world, and that it's a cool
it's an option. It's an option. It's a viable option. It's consistent, and like you said, it's very diverse. For one of my first episodes, I interviewed a commercial pilot with WestJet, and she was, I think she was going into public relations or something, or the arts, I think it was, and then all of a sudden, she saw a class at school that was on aviation, and she's like, oh, I think I'd like to try that. And it was just this thing that she never really had heard of growing up, or no one had ever said, hey, did you know you could be a pilot? And now she's so grateful that she was able to, you know, go with that and learn. And So yeah, I agree. And not like, I love men. I love my husband. There's so many supportive men
Yes.
out there. I do want to get that across. But it is interesting sometimes the feedback or pushback that can come up. But you're right. If it's almost like water off a duck's back, be like, okay, let's just keep moving on. Let's keep
Yeah,
moving forward.
that is your problem, not mine.
Yeah, exactly. That's a you problem.
Yeah.
Totally. What would you say in your career of aviation that has been a big challenge for you?
I think just the complexity of the industry. There's always issues, and it's always 100 miles an hour. And that's just a reality. In the early days, you go, well, when things slow down, I'm going to do the following 10 things. And it never happened. It doesn't happen. It's just there's always something. There's always some either a financial issues to deal with. There's there's no end to it. And that's what's captivating about it. And so it's just full of those kinds of obstacles, but that's not unique to aviation.
True.
But what I do love about the industry is, for as vast a part of the planet as aviation covers, when you think about just the flying part of it, just carrying people, it's quite a small industry.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us know one another, doesn't matter what country you're in, you go to these big conferences in other countries. It's like, oh, hi, how you doing? Haven't seen you since last year. And it's a small industry. And the people that I've met, they're amazing. They're trying to do the right things. They're trying to make it better. And some of those other things earlier. But I don't think it would have mattered what industry you end up in.
Mm-hmm.
It's complex, and there are issues that need to be dealt with, and you just have to dig in and put one foot in front of the other and
definitely be a problem solver. Yeah. Do your best. Ask questions. Try to find the answers. You're right. Yeah.
Oh, never be scared to ask a dumb question. Like, tell me about this. What?
Yeah, always a learning opportunity, a moment. It's so true. Is there anything in your career that you would say kind of stands out as something you're most proud of?
I don't know. I guess just having stayed the course for all these years and had the opportunity to work for some really interesting companies with some very interesting people. I have developed some wonderful friendships with people in the industry. And had a lot of laughs along the way. And honestly, if you can't do that, there's almost no point in being there. And that was the grasshopper moment. There were no laughs happening at that day. And it's been fun. As challenging as it's been, it's also been a lot of fun. And I've met some amazing people. And that's the total upside of it.
Perfect. It's true. And in the end, life is short. And like you said, the industry is small. So it's important to make those connections. Really important. I was speaking to the CFO of Kelowna Airport, and actually they were talking about how, again, small the industry is, but I thought it was so incredible that, monthly or quarterly, a lot of the airports get on the phone calls together and they just discuss and they share knowledge of what's going on. And it's less of a competition and it's more of a collaboration. And that I thought was really unique and really important for all of us to know that they're all trying to work and do their best. Everyone in aviation is. So really, really important that way. I love asking this question. So what is the best piece of advice that you've received and who is it from?
Did a panel about a month ago here in Kelowna, and they asked that same question. And the best piece of advice I ever received was from my dad. And he was the guy that went, law school? What? No, I don't think you're going to make it to law school. Like, nice try, bud. But same guy, he was, he did all kinds of things. He was like Saskatchewan ping pong champion for a while and crazy things like that. A private pilot. He sold life insurance. And in those days, back in the, 60s and beyond, a lot of the families that he met, the breadwinner of the family, if you will, had passed away, leaving a widow without enough insurance and no skills outside the home to look after themselves. Didn't know how to manage the money. They didn't know how to pay the bills. They didn't know how to do really anything. Great homemakers, no other way of earning money. And if there was no life insurance, they were in trouble. And he saw that over and over and over again. So I think that's what really informed the advice he gave. But he said to me, it doesn't matter what you decide to do in your life, who you decide to marry, if at all, whatever, you better always be able to look after yourself. And he said that over and over to me. So, I guess it kind of stuck in my mind that, if you can only have to rely on yourself, that's a good thing. And all those other decisions you make in your life are choices because you want to be there, not because you have to do something. So I always thought that was a pretty good piece of advice.
Great advice. Great advice. And I always love fathers for being able to drill something over and over again. So then even after they're long gone, you can still hear them talking. Yeah.
Him and my grandpa, my Hungarian grandpa, Tracy, don't go on other people's property, right? Like he would just like, I can still hear that in my mind.
That's like my Nona, my Italian grandma. She would same things. Raquel, life of life, eh? Life of life. We'd always be like, what does that mean? Life is just life. It's going to happen no matter what. Oh, it's the best. I love it. That's such good advice. And stay off people's property. I like that one too. Yeah. No trespassing.
No.
Oh, this is fantastic. It's really been special to speak with you. I love your insight, and I really hope that this can help inspire others looking to be in the aviation industry or just inquire more about it. Go to KF Aerospace, check it out, go to the Center for Excellence, learn about aviation. And if there's some part of it that fascinates you, reach out and talk about it and see where it can go from there and tell your kids about it. So really, really great in that way. So where can people find more of you?
Well, the Center for Excellence, for anybody that's in Kelowna or coming to Kelowna, is a fantastic place to be because it's just this wonderful building. It's shaped like an aircraft. It was intended to be that way. It's got wonderful old airplanes in it. And there's a whole bunch of things in there that you can touch. It's one of the places where you can bring small children and you don't have to be going, oh, don't touch that, don't touch that. You can touch most of it. So that's a great place to go just to get exposure. You know, KF Aerospace has a website, obviously, in terms of job positions that are open. That's the place to go. There are job fairs on occasion. As I mentioned, there was one in the spring that was combined with the travel show that just happened last weekend. So there are job fairs on occasion where you can go, and there's a Girls Fly 2 that happens in Abbotsford in the summer. We usually have KF people that are there. So it's pretty easy to get exposed to us. It's pretty easy to reach out. We're an approachable bunch, I would say. So
love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time. I appreciate it a ton. And I really do hope that, I know we're going to see a lot more from you guys. That's for sure.
Thank you. It was lovely chatting.
When it comes to beautiful British Columbia, Vancouver Island is definitely one place to put high on your bucket list. As your island gateway, Nanaimo Airport is conveniently nestled in the Central Island. It's located right between the hubs of the Cowichan Valley and Nanaimo, and you're only moments away from the ocean surf, mountain bike trails, year-round golf, wineries, and majestic mountains, just to name a few. The air terminal building has more than tripled in size over the years thanks to many projects that have taken place and a 20-year expansion plan for the building. And super fun fact, did you know that Nanaimo Airport actually started out as a base for the Royal Canadian Air Force? It was for glider pilot training facilities and wartime emergency airfield. And now more than 80 years later, it's a regional airport that's connecting Vancouver Island to the world. So definitely put Nanaimo Airport on your next destination list when you go to Vancouver Island. So go get outside and explore. If you like this episode, please subscribe, download a few more, and leave a review. I really would love to hear from you, what you enjoyed and what your key takeaways were. And of course, please let me know if there's any aspect of the travel industry you want me to talk about next. You can also search for the hashtag SheDaresToTravelPodcast on Instagram and comment on the episode's post with your questions. I'd love to answer them all for you guys. I hope you enjoy your day, stay so well, and until next time, fly straight.